Medical professionals. Have you ever had a patient so lacking in common sense that you wondered how they made it this far? If so, what is your story? I'm a vet. A few years ago, I had a client bring his young cat in complaining of lethargy. Besides being a bit underweight, the physical exam was unremarkable, so I asked more questions about the cat's diet. Me. What do you feed this cat? Owner. Online trendy raw food brand. Me. How is his appetite? Does he finish what you feed him? Owner. Yes, he always eats everything. Me. How much do you feed him? Owner. A half cup. Me. Once or twice daily? Owner. Once every 3 or 4 days. Me. You only feed your cat twice a week? Owner. I believe in a more natural feeding approach, and based on my research, that's how often cats eat in the wild. This owner was slowly starving his cat based on some cockamamie idea he'd made up while watching National Geographic. I had to explain to him that domestic cats are not tigers and that small wild cats eat 10 to 20 small meals daily. Surprise! The cat's lethargy and weight improved with regular feeding. Story 2. I'm a pharmacist. One evening shift, I was working a relief shift. A man comes in looking distressed. Man, I had physical relations with a woman I do not intend to pursue a long-term relationship with. Yes, he said it just like that. Me. Okay, I'm assuming there was an accident or it was unprotected. How long ago did it happen? Man. Last night at 7 p.m. on the couch. Whoa, TMI. I just need to know the approximate time to know if Plan B will work. Me. We have this medication called Plan B, and since the incident happened within 72 hours. Man. Oh yes, I got that for her already yesterday, right after we finished. We want to know if there is anything we can do to know if she's pregnant now. Me. Unfortunately, no. She'll have to wait 3 weeks or so to see if she gets her period, and if she doesn't, then she can do a pregnancy test then. Theoretically, you could do a blood test for faster results, but that would also not be until a couple of weeks at least. Man, we're just really anxious because she doesn't want to be pregnant. Is there anything that she can take? Any multivitamins, minerals, food? Me. She's already taken it, which was Plan B. There are some other options, but those are prescriptions. And no, there are no over-the-counter products she can take. Man, what about me? Is there anything I can take now? Any multivitamins or minerals? Me. No, sir, there isn't anything you can take now. I'm on his side. That dude shouldn't reproduce. Story 3. I used to be a medical oxygen tech, mostly doing in-home work. One guy was at such a high concentration that he would have drawn nearly zero oxygen from breathing regular air. This required 2 heavy-duty machines hooked up in tandem just to keep him barely alive. This was explained repeatedly to him and his wife with full, signed documentation of every conversation. They'd shut one machine off because they decided it was too loud. He'd take his mask off because he decided it was too cold. She would unplug the hose if she decided it was in the way. So on and so on. Literally everything you could think of that would restrict or cut off his oxygen intake. Then they would panic and call our emergency service when he started to react to no oxygen intake. I lived not even 5 minutes away, right beside our EMS or fire station, and the call would always come to me to fix the machines at random times of the day and night, 3 to 7 days a week. They refused to call 911 because they didn't want to make a scene. This went on for ages. Well, over 18 months, until he was having trouble sleeping one night and shut the machines off before going back to bed. It's been years and I still see the wife around town. She always glares at me as if I'm the one who did it to him. Story 4. I work in home health. At my last job, I had a lady call saying she was returning my call specifically. I don't recall her at all, and when I check for anything on her, it shows we have never received a referral or anything for her, which I tell her. She got mad and started screaming at me. She wouldn't let me get a word in to tell her to call the discharge planner at the hospital. Like a good 8 minutes of her screaming at me, calling me heartless and an idiot. You name it. Whatever it is, it's slow and these calls are usually good for a laugh. She took a breath and I said, "Ma'am, I'm not sure who called you, especially since we haven't heard of you before now." She interrupted with, "No, it was definitely you. You said your name was Shelaton and you were calling from Advanced Home Health." "Ah, we have detected the problem." I told her, "I see what's going on. You accidentally called AmberCare Home Health. Let me get you Advanced's number." Then she said, "I have it. They didn't pick up the phone, so I called you guys." I was not expecting that one. Wow, there's nothing quite like people doubling down on what's wrong. Lol. Story 5. A lady brings her baby into the ER with a temperature of 103. She refuses all medications, says she doesn't believe in them, and wonders why her herbal tea, she brought a jug of it, isn't working. She wants us to just check her out. She thinks a children's emergency room just checks them out. I tried to explain why the kid needed an NSAID, but she kept refusing. Says she doesn't know what's in it. I brought up the fact that she had her kid in the hospital and that she recovered from medication herself, IV, epidural, etc. She still doesn't budge. She was only concerned for herself. I told her that when the kid gets a seizure or becomes unresponsive and you call 911, you can expect the medics to give the kid everything it needs, regardless of whether you like it or not. Only when the doctor threatened to contact social services for child endangerment and maltreatment did she start to listen. For like 5 whole seconds. She left against medical advice. People like this exist and breed. Story 6. 73 here, a former clinical microbiologist a long time ago. Still, I found myself all over the clinical lab at times, not just infectious diseases. So one day, this 20-something guy, wife and mom in tow, walked in with a paper request for analysis, pre-computer era. Okay, not the most comfortable encounter, but I'm a professional and have done this drill many times. He had not been briefed by the doctor and had no idea how establishing infertility in males was done. Well, okay, a challenge then. I took him aside and, using standard medical terminology, I told him how a diagnosis is made and what he needed to do to provide a specimen. He couldn't believe that I was asking him to unload a specimen into that container. Astonished. Then he played dumb as if the word were unfamiliar to him. We looped through the medical terms and procedure again, and I eventually resorted to every word I knew to describe the act. It was like a George Carlin bit. A half hour later, he emerged from the toilet with 2 inches of whiz in the cup. God almighty. The report went back. Patient provided an improper specimen. Story 7. Pharmacist here. I had a woman bring in a literal sandwich bag, unseparated, in which she kept all her medications. She needed help seeing which medication she was low on or out on and asking different questions about the medications. When she pointed to an Apoquel stating it was her blood pressure medicine, I immediately became concerned as to why pet medicine was in her bag, and why she was mixing all her meds in the bag in the first place, only to find out that she had been throwing her pet medicine inside her bag of medicine. So the Lord knows what she's been giving her dog or taking herself. I immediately stressed how important it is to keep medicine in its original container to protect the medicine in herself and to know the directions for how to take it. I've seen her a few times since then, and I'm glad to see she has since taken my advice. But how any pharmacist or doctor hasn't advised her on this before is beyond me. Wow, I'm impressed this dude actually recognized a pill for dogs. Story 8. Physiotherapist here. For those that don't know, after a total knee replacement, you have a 6-week window after the surgery to regain the range of motion. If you don't regain the range in those first 6 weeks, it ain't coming back. I had a patient who was a farmer who was very enthusiastic about regaining the range because he needed to be mobile for his work. I saw him for the first time about 5 days after surgery, showed him all the basic exercises, told him not to do any farm work for at least 6 weeks, and told him to come back to see me once a week for the first 6 weeks. He disappeared and came back about 8 weeks later. His range was non-existent, maybe 30 degrees of range in total. He was visibly mad at me as if it were my fault, actually shouting and calling me incompetent. A conversation went something like this. Have you been doing the exercises? No. How often are you doing farm work? Every day. Why haven't you come back since the first appointment 8 weeks ago? Too busy with farm work. So to summarize here, you did absolutely nothing that I told you to, and this is somehow my fault. I never saw him again. Story 9. Paramedic here. An elderly woman complained that her mouth was dry and she felt a bit dizzy climbing the stairs earlier. I went through the whole rigmarole of getting a medical history, vitals, and more details and symptoms. I asked her what she had to drink today. A cup of tea 10 hours ago. Any water? No. Guess what fixed it within 5 minutes? Story 10. I work at the ER. There are so many stories. The one that left me dumbfounded was a woman who was brought in by her sister for pelvic cramps and amenorrhea for 3 months. Lo and behold, she's pregnant. The sister informed me that she sleeps with the Brazilian construction workers building the condo complex next door. I asked if they had any questions. The patient asked me if her baby would come out speaking Spanish. After a long pause and her sister staring at the ceiling, I told her, no, because they speak Portuguese in Brazil. The patient seemed relieved and the sister hustled her out of the ER before I could discharge her. I would have said yes and suggested that she immediately start learning before the baby arrives. I am willing to bet that you have been scratching your head for a solid couple of minutes now after watching all these stories. Don't worry. You and me both, dude. Good thing, though, that I have many other topics in my other videos, so hit the like button and subscribe to my channel to watch them too. Story 11. Not a personal experience, but one from a colleague of mine. I only saw the pictures. So this 60-something-year-old suffers from an acute complication and gets a pacemaker to solve the problem. Everything went normally and as planned. He recovered, every care and medication that he needed to take was prescribed and explained, and medical appointments with a cardiologist or arrhythmologist are scheduled so that he may get the follow-up he needs. The man then proceeded to never show up to any appointment and never answered any calls from the hospital to let them know of him and reschedule. This went on for around 3 years, until he showed up without warning and asked to talk with a doctor who did the procedure to put his pacemaker on. People were weirded out, but saying that on the day that the doctor was present and this patient was in clear distress, they talked to him and managed a couple of minutes to have the doctor check on him. Inside the appointment room, the doctor took notice that this man was wearing a bra inside his shirt. The man explained that he had been wearing his daughter's bra for 3 months after his problem got worse. The shirt was asked to be taken off, and there he stands, the shirtless man wearing his daughter's bra, showing off the pacemaker that should have been kept inside his body, dangling outside of it, being held by the left bra cup. Nobody has any idea how the man let that situation come to be or how he didn't get worse and had sepsis or any other health problem that may appear for that matter. Story 12. I had a girl come into my ER with some complaints that required an x-ray. It's standard that we do a urine pregnancy test before imaging any female of childbearing years. She insisted that she'd never done it and there was zero possibility of pregnancy. We did the test anyway and it showed that she was pregnant. We did a blood pregnancy test to confirm the results since she insisted she couldn't possibly be pregnant because she'd never done it. That was positive too. We gave her a few minutes herself to figure out what the hell happened, and when I returned to check on her a short time later, she asked me if she could get pregnant even though her boyfriend didn't go all the way in. She 100% believed that because of that, it wasn't considered to have physical relations. It took nearly a half hour of explaining reproduction to her for her to understand. Story 13. I work night shifts in the ER. A family brought in their child at 2 a.m.-ish. I asked them what was wrong. Them. Ask him, the kid. He said he needed to see a doctor. Me. Did he say anything was wrong? Them. No. He said he needed to see a doctor, so we brought him. A quick back and forth that firmly establishes that they actually showed up in the ER at 2 a.m. purely because the child said he needed to see a doctor and they don't know why. Meet a child. Why do you need to see a doctor? Kid. The doctor has suckers. Me. Huh? To be clear, it's the parents who lack sense, not the kid. Seems like the child already has suckers at home. Story 14. I'm a dermatologist in India. As is the culture here, people eat with their hands and almost all of our curries or even other dry side dishes have a lot of turmeric. It is common knowledge to anyone born and brought up in India that this means the nails of your dominant hand, statistically the right hand, are going to be yellow stained because we have seen this happen since our childhood. Usually this wears off in about a day and a half if you wash it a couple of times. Cut to the first patient in my OPD, a young girl in her early 20s, very anxious. Me. What brings you here today? P. Doc, my right hand fingernails keep getting yellow and discolored. Me. Only the right hand? P. Yes, and only after meals. Me. Do you eat with your hands? P. Yes, always. Me. So, you know it's just turmeric, right? P. Yes, but can you make it stop happening? Me. For God's sake, use a spoon. P. So you mean there's no medicine to make it stop? Me. P. Me. No. This might hit home more with people of South Asian cultures or people who habitually eat turmeric-cooked food with their hands. Anyway, for a grown person to complain about this was just surprising and a little ridiculous. Story 15. I work in veterinary medicine and my clients are absolute idiots who are convinced that they are the smartest people in the world. It is amazing that pets actually manage to stay alive. People will believe just about anyone else over the advice of their veterinarian. Their breeder, their relatives, the lawnmower, the person bagging their groceries. I had a client blind their cat with tea tree oil because they read about it on the internet. Clients change their pet's medication dose for whatever reason. It's really fun when it's insulin. Not following post-op instructions and causing their pet harm or compromising the repairs we just made. Feed their dog pot roast with garlic and onions as their bland diet for GI upset. Heck, last week, I had a client scream at me because we didn't give her an exam room with a view. We don't have exam rooms with outside windows. Story 16. This happened to a friend who was a pediatric critical care nurse in Iowa. One day she heard a lot of screaming and swearing down the hall and went to see what was going on. A man was going crazy, taking swings at everyone and screaming that no one was allowed to go near his daughter. My friend calmed down enough to find out why he was so upset. Father. They want to give my daughter blood, but I don't want any N-word blood. Friend. Okay, you do know that blood is blood, right? Father. No, she'll turn black if she's given black blood. Friend. Desperate to get that blood transfusion scribbled on a paper. Baby X is to receive only white people's blood. Okay, sign here. The dude signed and they started the blood transfusion just as police arrived to drag the lunatic away. Story 17. I worked in the emergency department for 10 years. Every day, people come in and it shocks you how they managed to stay alive for that long. One of the worst was when we had a guy come in. He was a twin. He told us he needed to get checked for because his sister apparently just got one. We, of course, had to ask if he had physical relations with her, and he said no. But they were twins, so that's what she has. So does he. After a collective sigh of relief that this wasn't some weird Alabama your sister crap, we had to educate him. That is not how it worked at all. Wait till he gets pregnant. Story 18. Optometrist here. A patient booked in for an emergency appointment with a raging red eye, clearly very painful. I looked under the microscope and the cornea is really not happy. Wobbly reflexes, haziness, the works. Me. What happened? Patient. It's my niece's wedding this Saturday and I wanted to tint my eyelashes to match my hair and the color scheme of the wedding, light blue. So I used the same dye for both to match the color. Me. Does that hair dye contain ammonia by any chance? Patient. I think so. Do you think my eye will be better by Saturday? Will it match the color scheme? Me. Unless you can convince them to change the color scheme to red, no. I have another story. A patient attends a routine test complaining of gradually reduced vision, which turns out to be due to cataracts. My colleague offers a referral for surgery. No need, exclaims the patient. I know what I need for this. I have lapis lazuli at home. 6 weeks later, I came back for the referral. The story was the first time I questioned my sanity. An elderly patient attends with concerned family members because the patient ran over a pop-up tent on the side of the road that the telephone engineers used to protect themselves from the rain. Luckily, no one was hurt as the worker was on lunch. Worried as to how the elderly driver missed seeing a large red and white tent in the middle of the day, it was then that the elderly relative admitted to having spent the last 3 years driving from memory. Story 19. EMS here. I had a diabetic in his 30s to 40s who refused to take insulin since 2012. It was 2020 at the time. When I took his blood sugar, it was only read as high, meaning it was over 700 for the glucometer to not read it. Upon seeing this, he asked me if it was that high and then went, "Is this because of all the ice cream I ate?" He was on a Facebook Messenger video with his girlfriend the entire time. I met him later on in the parking lot after he got discharged and took this man less than 50 paces from the ER door to rip off the bandage covering his IV and play with the IV wound. He knocked on our ambulance door and asked for a bandage to fix it. We had to walk him back into the ER and bandage his entire arm with gauze so that, hopefully, by the time he got it off, it would have sealed enough for him to not end up exsanguinating himself. Story 20. I overheard a conversation between a nurse and a doctor who had a patient in the ER. They were trying to figure out if he was very stupid or had a head injury. It was both hilarious and sad. He kept telling them that he was there for a hurt leg. He couldn't explain why his leg was hurt, how it was hurt, how he got there, nearly anything. He heard them talking in a hallway to each other. The nurse was convinced he hit his head. The doctor said, "No, he's just an idiot." It turns out the doctor was right. They got a hold of the guy's wife. She basically told him in the hallway that he's always this dumb and if she left him, he would get lost in his own house and starve. It sounded like his leg was visibly injured or swollen, but when asked what happened or how it felt, he gave nonsensical, idiotic answers. Not like slurring, but in a regular idiotic voice. Patient. "I was talking to Jimmy and we were doing our usual work and my leg hurts." Doc. "Did something happen? What is the work?" Patient. "Something always happens. You know how it goes. I just want my leg fixed." Story 21. This was one of the funniest yet cutest ones. I was a student doing a shift in andrology and reproductive health. Doc. "So you're trying to have kids but not managing to, so do you have any other kids?" Patient. "Yes, doctor, I have one." Doc. "Okay, so we need to do this and this and that." Patient. "Okay, great." Then he proceeds to visit him and stuff, after which he goes away. After a couple of seconds, he knocked on the door again, saying, "Hello, doctor. My wife told me that it would be relevant to you that the son I have is adopted, but that makes no difference to me. I always considered him as my own son." I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. Doctors, what's the dumbest self-diagnosis you've heard from a patient? Story 3 will make you question some people's decisions. See you on that video.